My name is Deb Osborne. I am the proud past president of NCDA. It's such a joy to be with you again here at NCDA Boston to celebrate our 100th birthday, to be here with you to celebrate that. We're going to start this morning off with acknowledging some of the tremendous folks that have made contributions in the last year and truly in many of the years in the past. We do walk among giants, and I hope that you will be as inspired by these individuals as I was. To start us off, we wanted to recognize our fellows. An NCDA fellow is a member of professional distinction within the association and conferred to recognizing outstanding and substantial contributions in either science, policy development, service, or political action. NCD fellows are current or past leaders of the association and have unique contributions to our history. Our first NCDA fellow is a past president of NCDA. She's the Associate Director for the Career Center at the University of Texas, Arlington. Would you please welcome Ms. Sherry Butler to the stage? Sherry Butler is a career and personal development counselor and educator with over 20 years experience working with individuals and organizations, creating successful career, leadership, and life paths. Sherry has been an active member of NCDA since 1991 and has held positions such as Credentials Chair, Publications Chair, and as I mentioned, past president, also secretary. Her presidential year was filled with many accomplishments at both the national and international levels. The work she has performed has helped position NCDA as the premier career development organization worldwide. Thank you, Sherry. Our second fellow is a well-established career counselor with extensive counseling, consulting, training, service delivery, and curriculum development background, certified as an NCDA career development facilitator instructor and an NCDA master career counselor. She also is a National Institute of Corrections master trainer for offender workforce development specialist facilitator training. Try saying that. Goodness. And she's represented NCDA in negotiations for the CDF training with the Chinese governmental agencies and meetings in Shanghai and Beijing. This person has been an active member of NCDA since 1988, serving as president in 2005 and 2006, and on the executive committee from 1999 to 2007. Please welcome our other fellow, Martha Russell. Our next awardee is for the International Award recognition. Would you please welcome to the stage Dr. Jorge Benitez. I don't see him this morning, but we will recognize him tonight or tomorrow. But he was very developmental and helpful in developing the Peruvian Career Development Association. So you'll want to say thank you to him for helping spread the word and the joy of NCDA far and wide. Very good. Okay. Next, we want to talk about the Ken Hoyt Outstanding Career Education Practitioner. Established in 2010 as a memorial to Dr. Hoyt, this award is offered by NCDA and AACE to honor Dr. Hoyt's life and work. The winner is a career education practitioner who enables and provides effective career education and supports the continued planning and development of exemplary career education throughout the lifespan. Would you please welcome to the stage Dr. Linda Kobolars. I missed one, a very important award. This was an award established last year by our newly constructed Diversity Committee for Inclusion, Multicultural Active, and so forth. The Diversity Award winner is, well, first, let me say, the Diversity Initiative Award recognizes an individual who, through their activities, their initiatives, and commitment, has demonstrated an extremely high degree of cultural responsiveness within the domain of career-related activities. Dr. Barry Chung, is a professor of counselor education and counseling psychology at Indiana University Bloomington. Would you please welcome him to the stage? Dr. Chung has been an active member of NCDA since 1994 and was elected as an NCDA Fellow in 2003. He served on the NCDA Board of Directors for 9 consecutive years, 1999 to 2008. During his terms on the board, Barry made significant contributions to multicultural and international initiatives of NCDA, including signing several international contracts for the CDF curriculum, translation, and training, and launching the current logo of our association. Thank you, Barry.
And I am young.
And you are young. That's right, okay. Our Outstanding Career Practitioners Awards for 2013. These are individuals that have been nominated by their peers for their outstanding contributions and service to our organization and to the clients that they serve. First, I'd like to welcome Elizabeth Craig, who has over 30 years of service in private practice as a career development professional, assisting stuck and frustrated young adults. We've all been there. Some of us are still there, right? Mid-career professionals and those 50 and over in finding and landing fulfilling opportunities. Isn't that a tribute? She assists clients in a wide variety of career management and job transition areas. In addition to her NCDA involvement, she is active with various local, state, national, and international associations. Elizabeth was the Minnesota Statewide Vocational Equity Grant-funded project coordinator for 6 years, project director coordinating over 22 statewide regional partnering workshops throughout Minnesota, and is a past president of the Minnesota Professional Organization. Recently, she led her entire college career services team through the NCDA CDF training using technology as well as traditional and in-person formats. Thank you, Elizabeth, for your contributions. We have a second Outstanding Career Practitioner Award, and perhaps as I'm reading these, you're thinking, I know some folks that are doing great work. Please nominate them next year. We'd love to celebrate the accomplishments of our members, and we learn so much from all of you when we do that. Ilana Levitt is the current president of the New Jersey Counseling Association and past president of the New Jersey Career Development Employment Counseling Association. She maintains private practices in New York City and East Brunswick, New Jersey, while also serving as the director of employee development and organizational effectiveness at the New School in New York. She provides mental health and career services to adults, supports clients through life transitions, and has developed and delivered corporate training programs on team building, leadership, development, and communication. Thank you, Ilana, for your contributions. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Okay, all right. We have our international awardee present, so we would like to invite Dr. Benitez to come and receive his award for his contributions in helping us develop the Peruvian Career Development Association. Thank you. Please join me in another round of applause for his help. He would like to say a few words to us.
Muy buenos días. En primer lugar, disculpe mi tardanza.
Please forgive my lateness.
Estoy sumamente agradecido con la institución en nombre del Perú y agradezco a Dios por permitirme saludar personalmente a la Asociación Nacional de Desarrollo de Carreras en nombre de la Asociación Peruana de Desarrollo de Carreras.
I'm extremely grateful to NCDA for this wonderful award. I'm extremely grateful in the name of the nation of Peru. I'm grateful to my creator, and I'm grateful to these wonderful people here today. Thank you very much.
Que Dios les bendiga y les esperamos en el Perú. Muchas gracias.
May God bless you, and we'll wait for you in Peru anytime. Please come.
We next have the Career Development Facilitator Champion Award. Love that word. The NCDA CDF Champion Award recognition recognizes an individual who may or may not be a career practitioner, but who has promoted the CDF program. The key criteria include an individual who has advanced the training of others as career development facilitators, an individual who has contributed to an increased awareness of the NCDA CDF program. There is no one that has done that more perhaps in the States than our award winner Ray Davis, who was instrumental in passing the state legislation in South Carolina requiring that all school counselors receive the CDF training. So our school counselors in South Carolina know what they're doing. Let's welcome Ray Davis. We are thrilled to have among us many graduate students that have found their passion in exploring and discovering the joy of the work that we do in terms of career counseling and career practitioners and career service provision. This year, we want to honor some of our graduate students with regards to their research as well in promoting and extending our work and our knowledge base. Each year, we present research grants to graduate students that are conducting research in areas of career development. So if you are a graduate student, listen up. This could be you next year. So, in addition, NCDA presents the Career Development Quarterly Outstanding Research Award to the deserving authors. These awards have been established to honor these graduate students who undertake exemplary research addressing topics related to career information, career development, and career planning, issues near and dear to our hearts that help us to extend and enhance the services we provide to our clients. This year's Graduate Student Research Award winners include Melissa Wheeler from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and her research was measuring the effectiveness of the Major Decision, a counseling group for undecided and redeciding first-year, first-generation college students. Please come to the stage and welcome Melissa. Our second Graduate Student Research Award winner is Rachel Nidzarum from University of Wisconsin-Madison. She's not with us today, but just to give you a taste of what she was looking at, vicarious experiences of unemployment. We know the need for that research. Relationships to mental health symptomatology and help-seeking attitudes. So if you know Rachel, please say thank you for your contribution. Our third Graduate Student Research Award winner is Alec Eshelman from Southern Illinois University, whose study looked at the socioeconomic status and social class as predictors of career adaptability and educational aspirations in high school students. Please welcome to the stage Alec Eshelman. And finally, we want to make mention of our Outstanding Career Development Quarterly article for 2012, the evaluation of an intervention to foster time, perspective, and career decidedness in a group of Italian adolescents by Leah Ferrari, Laura Notte, and Salvador Cerisi from Italy. They're not here today, but we acknowledge their contribution. And finally, one more award, if we might. If you would look around and find a person next to you and shake their hand and say, "Good job this year." Go ahead. Right?
I'm doing suppressments. You forgot it, so I'm gonna do suppressments.
Oh, I forgot.
That's okay.
Oh,
It's
my
okay.
God.
Just
You're
walk
gonna do
off.
it.
It's okay. I'm gonna make this special award.
Make sure you say doctor.
I got it.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Let it go. Let it go.
Okay. Do you need the info?
Good morning, everyone. As we greet our colleagues, and I clear my throat after a wonderful day yesterday, again, as I welcome you in return from a long day yesterday, what a great day of celebration. Not only a happy birthday, but a remarkable donors dinner last night, remarkable speakers as we get ready to start the day. But there's one other exceptional award we want to give as well, and that is the Merit Award. So I'd like to first help you recognize, if you will, that all of us give a lot to our organization, and there's some exceptional awards that relate to the kind of things we do. We're very honored to make this award to Dr. Sue Pressman. Sue, would you please come forward? As we talked yesterday about our wonderful history, talk about looking backward to look forward, it's without exception that we better pay attention to what we look forward to. And the importance of thinking about creativity and innovation and entrepreneurship is certainly part of what we do every day. It should be the context of how we understand our work. Regardless of whether we come here as a counselor or coach or counselor, educator, researcher, we all should think about where do jobs come from, what drives cities to grow, the importance of economic development, the whole notion of innovation, creativity in that relationship, and how do we help all people think entrepreneurially? And what are the ingredients and what's behind the whole notion of innovation and creativity? And we couldn't be happier today to find someone who's helping us look at that question. Dr. Tony Wagner recently accepted a position as the first Innovation Education Fellow at Technology and Entrepreneur Center at Harvard. Prior to this, he was the founder and co-director of the Change Leadership Group at the Harvard Graduate School of Education for more than a decade. Tony consults widely to schools, districts, and foundations worldwide. His previous work experience includes 12 years as a high school teacher, K-8 principal, university professor in teacher education, and founding executive director of Educators for Social Responsibility. Tony is a frequent speaker at national and international conferences and a widely published author. If you want to learn about somebody today, where's the first place you go? You go to Google, and you go to YouTube. And if you want to learn from people today, it's often right there. And for me, it was a wonderful experience to find somebody who spoke so well to the things that really resonate with me. So please check this gentleman out, not only his writing, but also his availability and access that he makes to us. His work includes numerous articles and 5 books. Tony's latest, Creating Innovators, The Making of Young People Who Will Change the World, has just been published by Simon & Schuster and had to rave reviews. His 2008 book was seminal. The Global Achievement Gap has been an international bestseller and is being translated into Chinese. Tony has also recently collaborated with a noted filmmaker, Robert Compton, to create a 60-minute documentary, The Finland Phenomena, Inside the World's Most Surprising School Systems. Tony earned his MAT and EDD at the Harvard University Graduate School of Education. And please welcome a great friend to our field, a scholar for sure, Tony Wagner.
Thanks very much. Thank you for that lovely presentation. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Well, I guess I have a little good news and bad news for you as you celebrate your birthday. By the way, happy birthday. Happy 100th. The good news is I suspect that your services are going to be more important than ever for a wide range of reasons to a lot of people. But with deep respect, I think you may have to change the name of your organization from career development to opportunity development. I think careers, as we've traditionally imagined them, are fast becoming obsolete. And young people are going to need some fundamentally different skills going forward. Let me explain. Number one, knowledge today has become a commodity. It's free. It's growing exponentially, changing constantly on every internet-connected device, so that there is no longer a competitive advantage in appearing to know more than the person next to you, because the person next to you is going to Google it and figure it out just in time. So raises fundamental questions about our whole notion of certification and grade point averages and test scores and things like that. Just a little bit of recent evidence. As you may know, Google was famous as a company for only hiring kids out of the best schools, in quotes, with the highest GPAs and the highest test scores. Because they figured, well, that's the way to do it. And they were in the business so they could, get anybody they wanted. You know what they discovered? Zero correlation between those indices and the most productive and innovative employees. Zero correlation. So they no longer pay any attention to GPA, grade point average, and all of those markings of the appearance of acquiring knowledge. What do they look for instead now? A sense of mission and a sense of personal autonomy. How do we prepare young people for that world? A world in which what matters most is not what you know. The world no longer cares how much you know. Google doesn't care how much you know. What the world cares about is what you can do with what you know, which is a completely different and brand new education and counseling problem, I would suggest. Because what matters most today is not content knowledge. Sure, that's still important. But what matters more is skill and will. The skill and the will to transform content knowledge, to create new content knowledge, to answer new questions, to solve new problems. So I'm going to talk about skill and will. A number of years ago, I have to sort of tell this story as a kind of an intellectual odyssey I've been on. A number of years ago, I read Thomas Friedman's book, The World is Flat. How many of you have read that book? Yeah. Well, it scared the heck out of me, frankly, because I did not understand the extent to which jobs were being offshored, automated. I didn't see that flat world until Friedman showed it to me. And so I began to worry about, well, what skills will our young people need to succeed in this flat world? And are they the same skills they'll need for learning and for citizenship, or something different? So I undertook what was for me a very different kind of research. I talked to a wide range of executives, for starters. I talked to folks from Apple to Unilever, and I talked to leaders in the US Army, the military. I talked to college teachers. I talked to community leaders, asking all of them, what are the skills that matter most today? And what do they see as the gaps? And I came to understand that there's a set of basic competencies that every young person must be well on the way to mastering before the end of high school. Not just to get and keep a good job in a flat world, but equally important, to be a lifelong learner and an active and informed citizen. For the first time in human history, it seems to me, the skills you need for citizenship and the skills you need for work have converged. They are the same skills. And they're skills that, for the most part, are neither tested nor taught, as I will explain. But what are they? I call them the 7 survival skills. I'll briefly describe them to you. Number 1, critical thinking and problem solving. Over and over again, I've come to see that the leaders in any sector, big business, small business, nonprofit, does not matter, expect every employee to think about how to continuously improve the product, the process, or the service. But when I asked these executives, what do they mean by critical thinking, it kind of got interesting. Because for us in education, critical thinking is a buzzword, right? We say it, But how many of us have really thought about it? If you'd asked me a decade ago, what is critical thinking? I might have said, well, yes, critical thinking is sort of like thinking critically. It's kind of a circular thing, really. Because I wasn't accountable to teach it. And I hadn't really thought about it. And it's not something you can figure out by yourself anyway. But when I asked these executives, the thing that was so striking is how consistent their response was. Over and over again, they said to me, critical thinking is about asking the right questions. It's about asking good questions. Because in fact, problem identification is even more important than problem solving. And problem identification demands that you ask really good questions. How do we teach kids to do that? Ask the right questions as opposed to repeat the right answers. Second survival skill, collaboration across networks and leading by influence. As you know, most work now is being done collaboratively, except, of course, in education. That's another problem. And more, it's actually being done virtually. You know, I give virtual keynotes now all the time. But it was interesting. Folks at IBM explained to me a reason why they prefer teams to work virtually. Because when they have a new client or a new customer or problem to solve, they intentionally create teams that are from all of their different centers around the world because they want to create solutions that will work in more than one country or culture. First requirement of that kind of teamwork is a deep appreciation of differences, cultural, religious, and ethnic. But the way those teams are led is fundamentally different than it was 20 years ago. They are no longer led by mid-level supervisors with positional authority. They are led by peers through influence. How do we develop those capabilities? Third survival skill, agility and adaptability. Quite simply, the pace of change, the complexity of problems demands individuals who are agile and adaptable. Fourth survival skill, initiative and entrepreneurialism. It was Mark Chandler, who was then general counsel and vice president of Cisco Systems, big high-tech company, who talked with me about how executives in large companies like his worry constantly about how to keep that entrepreneurial spirit and initiative strong and vibrant. He said something quite striking to me. He said, if I have an employee who sets and meets 5 goals, 100%, that's no longer good enough. He said, if on the other hand I have an employee who sets 10 stretch goals, but maybe only succeeds at 7 or 8, he or she is a hero. His words. But what would that person have been in our schools, having missed 2 or 3 out of 10? C, B student? You know, taking those risks? I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes. Fifth survival skill, effective oral and written communication. And it is the #1 complaint of both college teachers and employers. But it was Mike Summers, a senior executive at Dell Computer, who put an interesting spin on it for me. He said, you know, the reason these kids can't write, and he's talking about college graduates, it's because they don't know how to think. They don't know how to reason. They don't know how to construct a coherent argument. But then he said something even more striking. He said, that's only half the problem. The other half of the problem, he said, is they do not know how to write with voice. His words. Meaning they don't know how to put their own passion and perspective into their communication so as to be persuasive. I gave a talk just about a year ago in Australia to the 500 most senior executives of the largest conglomerate called Wesfarmers there. And after I finished, the chairman of the board of this large corporation got up and said, you know, of all the things you've said, this whole idea of being able to speak and write persuasively is critical. Because you can argue data both sides. But what we really need are managers who can advocate for key decisions. How many of our kids are learning how to speak and write with voice in this test-obsessed universe of ours? Sixth survival skill, accessing and analyzing information. We've been talking about that. But how many kids today know how to do an effective internet search and then critically evaluate the results and carry it forward? Especially since, as you well know, the internet is severely filtered in most schools. You can't even get onto YouTube in a lot of schools. Last survival skill, curiosity and imagination. Now, how many of you read Dan Pink's book, A Whole New Mind? Raise your hands. Yeah, I thought many of you might have. Well, as you know, he talks about curiosity and imagination in the context of an increasingly sophisticated consumerist society where we are demanding more sophisticated and beautiful products and services and so on. But I've come to see the need for curiosity and imagination in a very different context, as I'll explain. So as many of you know, I wrote this book called The Global Achievement Gap. It came out a little over 4 years ago. The global achievement gap, quite simply, is the gap between these new skills needed for careers, learning, and citizenship versus what is taught and tested even in our very best public and independent schools. Because you see, more and more I see one curriculum around the country, test prep. Now I believe in accountability. I believe in assessment. But whether it's AYP, meaning adequate yearly progress, no child left behind, or AP, meaning the advanced placement tests, these tests rely heavily on multiple choice, factual recall questions that tell us absolutely nothing about career, citizenship, or learning readiness for the 21st century. One reason that, in fact, a growing number of our most elite colleges and universities are dropping the advanced placement program altogether. Dartmouth College being the most recent, 2 months ago. Two things happened after this book came out. Number one, I began getting requests all over the world to come speak to leadership audiences about the new skills for the future. From Taiwan to Singapore to Thailand to Australia to Bahrain to Panama to Spain, England, Finland, from West Point to Wall Street. Been there, spoken to leadership audiences, and also in countless states around the country. And the amazing thing was how much agreement, not just in this country, but around the world, I found around these skills. 3 weeks ago, speaking to Fortune 200 CEOs, I got up, finished, Jeff Bezos, founder and CEO of Amazon, got up and said, "You nailed it. These are exactly the skills we need." This is now 4 years later. So I was feeling as though I'd perhaps made a contribution until the other thing happened. I'm talking about the global economic collapse from which we still suffer. Because, as you may know, for the first time in history, we saw young people come home with a brand new BA degree, the ink barely dry, and an average of $26,000 of debt and no jobs. Or jobs that don't pay enough to allow them to repay their college loans, their debts. Right now today, the combined unemployment and underemployment rate of recent college graduates, do you know this number? 54%. 40% are underemployed, meaning they have jobs that don't require a BA and don't pay BA wages. The remaining have no jobs whatsoever. And has that number changed in the last year? 0. You see the unemployment rate going down, that's largely fiction, because you see what that shows us is merely the number of people who've stopped looking for jobs altogether. And what that doesn't tell us is the quality of jobs people are getting and the kind of pay they're getting. What went wrong? You know, I was forced to kind of fundamentally reconsider some basic assumptions of mine. I thought you went to college, you became more skillful. That's why everybody says go to college. Not true. How many of you know the book Academically Adrift? Raise your hands. Anybody who's in this business needs to know that book. Because the research suggests that as many as a third of college graduates are no more able to think critically, reason analytically, or write effectively after 4 years of college than when they started. 1/3. No, I used to think that, you know, skills are what college is all about. Not true. You know, college is more about acquiring more content, okay, and maybe going to some cool parties, but doesn't necessarily make you more career ready. And in fact, as you know, lots and lots of folks have traditionally said, well, you know, it's a leg up in the employment market. That's true. If you've got a college degree, you're less likely to be unemployed altogether than a high school diploma, and you're more likely to earn more money. But what is now less clear, but an emerging trend, is the extent to which employers are inundated, deluged with resumes from college grads. They don't know how to look at them because these resumes tell them nothing about skillfulness. I was talking to some folks recently who started this new business called HireArt, HireArt.com. You really ought to check it out. Because they've been talking to these big businesses, and they say, yeah, we have this pile of resumes. First thing we do is throw half of them out. Half. Top half, bottom half, doesn't matter. Throw half out. We're overwhelmed. We don't know what to do with them. And then we said, you know, they don't tell us anything. They don't tell us what we need to know. So HireArt has figured out this business where they have developed a set of assessments for 3 areas: marketing, sales, and customer service, working closely with corporations like Cisco. And they've developed these online assessments where you go register as someone looking for a job. You take these assessments, and depending on your score on the assessments, you're then put forward for a job, regardless of whether or not you have a degree. Going forward, what will matter far more than your credential is your competence. So that's the first fundamental change as we think about moving forward. But the other thing I learned in this kind of reassessment of my work is that these 7 survival skills, while absolutely necessary, are no longer sufficient. They're not enough. Because now, with employers having virtual, pick of the litter, so to speak, they're looking for something more than these skills. They're looking for this. Thomas Friedman calls it this. Spark of imagination, an initiative. They're looking for people who are creative problem solvers, not just problem solvers. They're looking for innovators, people who can bring something more to the workplace. Why? Simply because the nature of competitiveness, global competitiveness, demands that they constantly are innovating as companies. So I really became interested in this problem of how do we educate for innovation? This company has been known as a very innovative country for a long time. Availability of investment capital, good infrastructure until recently, liberal immigration laws until recently, the strong copyright protection, rule of law. What about education? Part of the problem or part of the solution with respect to innovation? Trivia pursuit question of the day. I will ask and answer it so fast you will not be able to Google it. What do Bill Gates, Edwin Land, who invented the Polaroid instant camera across the river there, Bonnie Raitt, the folk singer, and Martin Zuckerberg of Facebook fame, all 4 have in common? They're not college dropouts. They're Harvard college dropouts. That's different. That's just different. Dean Kamen, Michael Dell, Steve Jobs, they were ordinary college dropouts. These guys were Harvard college. I just love doing that. It's so much fun. So with this new book, I became really interested in the question of what must we do differently as parents and teachers and mentors to develop the capabilities of many more young people to be creative problem solvers. That's my definition of innovation now. There's really 2 kinds of innovation. There's disruptive innovation, bringing whole new possibilities to life, and you may have to be born with certain gifts to be able to do that, like a Steve Jobs or a Bill Gates. But then there's incremental innovation, solving problems creatively. We are born curious, creative, imaginative. That is in the human DNA, to be able to solve problems creatively. Until those qualities are educated out of us, as Sir Kenneth Robinson suggests, or sometimes, parented out of us. So how do we keep those capabilities alive? How do we grow them? How do we nurture them? These are the questions I asked. So I interviewed a wide variety of young people in their 20s who were in fact creative problem solvers. Not truly exceptional people, maybe a couple, but most of them were, just solving problems creatively in a wide variety of fields: science, technology, engineering, some in the arts, some were social entrepreneurs and innovators. I then studied their ecosystems. I interviewed all their parents, looking for patterns of parenting. I then asked each one of them, was there a teacher who'd made a significant difference in their lives? Most could name one. Very few could name more than 1 or 2. And the teachers ranged in grades from elementary all the way to graduate school. I then interviewed all those teachers. And I made what was for me a stunning and highly unexpected discovery. In every single case, the teachers that had made the greatest difference in the lives of these young people, was an outlier, teaching in ways that were fundamentally different than his or her peers, but remarkably similar to one another, as I discovered. Then I visited those few schools that have an earned reputation for teaching innovation. Didn't take me long because there aren't that many. But I went to the MIT Media Lab across the river. I went to the brand new Olin College of Engineering out here in Needham. I went to the Institute of Design, D School at Stanford. I went to the High Tech High network of K-12 schools. I went to the New Tech High network of schools. And again, I found a pattern that the kind of learning and teaching I saw in all of those schools, literally from elementary all the way to graduate school, was completely consistent with my outlier teachers' ways of teaching and totally different than the kind of teaching and learning you see in other schools, K through graduate. And so what I've come to understand is that the culture of schooling, conventionally, as we have continued to practice and perpetuate it, is fundamentally and radically at odds with a culture that develops the capacity to innovate. 5 contradictions. Number 1, culture of schooling is all about rewarding and measuring individual achievement. Well, that's fine, except innovation is fundamentally a team sport. There is no innovation without deep teamwork. Also some time for individual work, but teamwork matters. Knowing this, every one of these teachers whom I interviewed and in the schools that I visited built accountable teamwork into every single project or assignment. Contradiction number 2. Conventional schools, we compartmentalize knowledge. Chemistry lives over there, very separate from math, yet they ought to be taught together, which is totally separate from biology or social science or history. And we reward specialization. You're supposed to go to college, have a major. Little problem. Innovation doesn't happen within the context of academic disciplines. It happens at the borders, at the margins. Judy Gilbert, then director of talent at Google, said to me, if there's one thing educators must realize is that problems can neither be understood nor solved within the bright lines of academic disciplines. Knowing this, these teachers who were developing skills of innovation taught courses interdisciplinarily around an essential question or a problem that needed to be solved. Third contradiction has to do with the experience of schooling. So often the experience of schooling is a passive experience. You're consuming passively. It's kind of an infantilizing experience. You're sucking, if you'll pardon the expression, on the big tit of the expert at the front of the room, who's the only one who has the knowledge. Not so in these classrooms that develops the capacities to innovate, because there the emphasis is on creating, not consuming. The teacher sees his or her role as being a coach to empower students to solve their own problems, to create their own knowledge, their own expertise. Last 2 contradictions, I think, are the most challenging of all. Contradiction number 4 is all about risk, all about failure. Because as you well know, what you learn in school is to avoid failure at all costs. The F thing is the worst thing that can happen to you, right? Here's the problem. We create a compliance culture, a culture that's highly risk-averse in schools for both students and teachers. But innovation demands that you take risks, make mistakes, and fail. I went to IDEO, the most innovative design company in the world, found out the company motto is fail early and fail often. Hell of a way to run a company. But it made sense to me when they explained that there is no innovation without trial and error. I went to the D School at Stanford talking about the whole problem of assessment and grading. They said, yeah, we're kind of thinking F is the new A. Boy, is that going to screw up transcripts, right? But it made sense when they explained that, you know, the kid who may have tried something and, quote, failed, may have learned more than someone who's never tried anything at all, the straight A kid who's never taken a risk. Finally, we talked to a young woman at the Olin College of Engineering. She put it all in perspective for me. She said, you know, we don't talk about failure here. We talk about iteration. My new favorite word, iteration. Assessing what you did on a project or in a course, what worked, what didn't, what you learned, and then applying those lessons to your next project or course. That's called iteration. How do we teach young people? Iteration. How do we focus in schools on iteration instead of failure, penalizing kids for trying something? Last contradiction has to do with motivation. I said I would talk about skill and will. This is the will part. Because as you know, we rely heavily on extrinsic incentives to motivate learning. Carrots and sticks, A's and F's, right? But what I discovered is that these young people, and more broadly, many of this generation, are far, far more intrinsically motivated, wanting to make a difference more than they want to make a lot of money. And extrinsic incentives don't motivate them to do their best. I wanted to understand, what had their parents and teachers done to reinforce and encourage this? So I went back and looked again, and I discovered a remarkable pattern. Both parents and teachers had encouraged and reinforced three things: play, passion, and purpose. Parents encouraged much more exploratory play, more open-ended time, fewer toys, toys without batteries, limiting screen time. Teachers brought the spirit of play into their assignments. It was Ed Carrier, who teaches engineering at Stanford, who talked with me about bringing an element of what he called whimsy into the assignments that he gave students, and how much more motivating that was for them. You need no look further than across the river at MIT's long tradition of student pranks to see the spirit of play and how much ingenuity it brings out in students. As these young people grew older, the parents were intentional about really trying to understand what most interests this child, what motivates this child. Because they understood that for a young person to find and pursue a passion was the best way to develop all of the things we now understand to be critical: perseverance, tenacity, concentration, self-regulation, and the discipline, the internal discipline required for mastery. So what they did was really encourage young people to find and pursue the passion, even though for some of them it was scary as heck. That these kids were, had interests that the parents didn't understand and were terrified would never lead to a good job. But the parents, took that risk, knowing that the pursuit of a passion was more powerful and important for adult success than mere academic achievement. Teachers did the same. They built time into their classes for young people to find and pursue their interests, to ask their own questions, trying to sort of keep that love of learning alive, that curiosity alive in their classes. As these young people grew older, their passions morphed, they evolved. And the adults were smart enough not to pigeonhole them. But in every case, they matured into a deeper sense of purpose, a desire to in some way give back or make a difference. And that's because both parents and teachers had reinforced one very simple lesson. That being that we are not here on this earth just for ourselves. We have some responsibility to give back, make a difference. And that we need to have real empathy for people who are different from us or disadvantaged. So there's a lot we can explore, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm deliberately keeping my remarks short because I want to hear your questions and comments and reflections on this. I want to learn from you. What does this mean for your futures and for the futures of people with whom you work? But fundamentally, I see two important and immediate considerations. As you counsel people, I think the challenge is to counsel them to develop skills more than credentials, because skills matter more in the future, and encourage them to document the development of their skills and their projects and so on through digital portfolios or e-portfolios. Pathbright.com is one very good portal that's free for individuals, pathbright.com. Because more and more we're seeing employers saying, oh, well, this transcript means nothing to me. I want to know what you've done. I want to see evidence of mastery. And a recent survey of the American Association of Colleges and Universities discovered that more than 8 in 10 employers are now really interested in seeing e-portfolios of prospective employees, up from 5 in 10 only a few years ago. So that's a growing trend. Getting young people to think about hacking their own learning, being intentional about developing skills, and documenting their work in e-portfolios or digital portfolios. Then the will part. It is increasingly clear to me that young people are going to have to figure out how to create opportunities, seize opportunities, in a world that is increasingly complex. And to sort of navigate their way through that world, I think they're going to need a different kind of motivation. I think they're going to need to have the strength that comes from finding and pursuing a passion. So fundamentally, I leave you with this question, and then I'm going to invite you to talk to one another for a couple of minutes and then have some Q&A. But the question is, what can you do as individuals and in your associations to more effectively coach young people and older people for the development of skill and will? So I'm going to invite you now to turn to your neighbor for just 2-3 minutes and react to this presentation. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? But most importantly, what are your questions? What do you think the implications are for your work? Then we're going to have a mic set up for Q&A. So take 2 or 3 minutes to debrief. Boy, I'm so sorry you didn't find anything to talk about or react to. What a shame. Well, we could just end it now. I am very anxious to hear your questions and comments. My chance to learn from you. Raise your hand if you can hear me. Ah, there we go. Great. Somebody got an email? Thanks. Really sorry I wasn't provocative enough and just didn't have enough to talk about. What a shame. Julian from Colorado stopped me in the aisle to ask the first question. He said, what about old school values? And when I wrote The Global Achievement Gap, I just assumed that values have always been important and will always be important. There's a universal set of ethical principles common to all religions and philosophies that have always been important. So, for me, that's bedrock. And fundamentally, you can really take the ultimate aims of education and distill them into one thing. It was Jean Piaget, the Swiss developmental psychologist, said the aim of education ultimately is to overcome egocentrism in 2 domains. Intellectually, overcoming egocentrism means learning to reason, to weigh evidence, instead of suspicion or uninformed opinion. Emotionally, he said, overcoming egocentrism means learning what he's called reciprocity, or what we would call empathy. So from my point of view, that is bedrock. And all of the values associated with that are as important now as they have ever been in human history. So thank you, Julian, for helping me to sort of clarify that. Other questions and comments? Right here, please. Please hold the mic close to your mouth so I can hear you.
Thank you for presenting to all of us, and I am very encouraged by your presentation. I'm an elementary school counselor from Wyoming, so I feel like a bit of a minority here. Yay! So again, thank you. I just wanted to share a story with all of you again as an elementary school counselor, because this really speaks to what I'm doing. It's an international concept called positive behavior intervention and support, and it's recognizing students on their great academic and social skills, and again, it is an international concept. And this year at my elementary school in Wyoming, I partnered with the local Humane Society with my positive behavior intervention and support concept. And students were rewarded by empowering others with their positive academic and their social and their gains in school. And I had gone around to area businesses and received money. And their growth earned money for the Humane Society. Okay. So it really was a win-win for everyone. So the businesses were able to donate it to the Humane Society as a 501(c)(3). And the students, with their good work, were helping feed the dogs and the cats at the Humane Society.
That's great.
And kids love animals. So it was a wonderful process to see that growth. And I'm looking for new ways to do this innovation with kids. So thank you again.
Well, thank you for being an innovator. Good job. Yes, please. Those of you who want to ask a question, it's probably better to line up here. It's going to be hard to get a mic to you in the middle.
Okay, yes, hi. Can you all hear me?
A little closer, please.
Okay, I'm David Bluestein. I'm a faculty member in counseling psych at Boston College, right across the river from Harvard. My question here is how does your thinking, which I thought was brilliant and really inspiring, how does it help us deal with the fundamental achievement gap? You know, the questions you've raised about entrepreneurship and creativity, how do we help the students who are struggling with basic academic skills,
Yeah.
reading, writing,
Great
literacy
question.
skills? Because my concern is that the ideas you present are really great for people who have a fair amount of privilege, who are college degree.
Yeah.
Unemployment rate is much higher for people without degrees.
Right. Those are really critical questions. First of all, in the young people I profiled, they were from both poverty and privilege. So I profiled some young people who were highly innovative, who were from single-parent moms, inner cities, one of whom was a college dropout, another finally managed to make her way through college. So what I discovered is that those young people from poverty were every bit as intrinsically motivated and desiring to be creative problem solvers as those from privilege. But I will take it a step further. My first 5 years, I taught at-risk students in an alternative public high school, an alternative school for kids who were highly at risk. And what I learned was that helping them to develop their intrinsic motivation, and my job being to help them find that motivation, was more important for kids who were disadvantaged or at risk than it was even for the privileged kids. Because the privileged kids, you know, back then were kind of on automatic. They'd get through school. But with the disadvantaged kids, you had to help them find a reason to want to learn to read and write and use math. So my job as a teacher was to try to connect an interest that they had and help them uncover that interest and connect it to some academic achievement. So I think intrinsic motivation is actually even more important for disadvantaged kids. But the broader issue, which I will briefly comment on, that we never talk about in this country is class and poverty. You know, I've been to Finland. I made a documentary about Finland's incredible education system, which we can talk more about if you like. But fundamentally, their childhood poverty rate is 3.4%. Ours is 22%. That's the real issue. That's the real achievement gap. It's an income gap. And all of the opportunities associated with that income gap continue to worsen for kids who are disadvantaged. More and more of the advantaged families realize the importance of getting their kids to take travel, study, getting their kids to do internships, getting their kids to do interesting and stimulating things on the weekends and so on. That's the achievement gap. Thank you for your question. Yes, please.
My name is Elliot Schoenberg. I'm from New York City. I run a career center for graduating seminary students, one in New York and one in Los Angeles. So my students all go into not-for-profits. And I find that the rhetoric of the not-for-profits is about innovation and change. My students are highly motivated, smart, well-educated, have an entrepreneurial spirit, and get hit with a total block by the not-for-profits who talk and it's rhetoric about change, but are about survival and about doing it the old way. And a year and a half into it, the students are dispirited and often go elsewhere. So the problem is on the side of the not-for-profit more than it is with the student and their system. That's at least been some of my experience.
Yeah. No, that's a real challenge. The challenge is leadership. The challenge is how leaders see their authority. I write about that in Creating Innovators. I profile different kinds of leaders who really have understood the importance of transitioning from, only the person at the top has the knowledge and the expertise, to the idea of really a collective wisdom and understanding. There was a great story about Best Buy's turnaround. I interviewed the former CEO there, and he talked about how the only way he could turn around that company was really by listening to his youngest employees who were on the floor talking to customers. So I think the idea of transitioning authority from one of kind of position to one of enablement and empowerment is the leadership challenge in both not-for-profits and in corporations. So you see this problem both places. But I think at some point, more and more of these companies and nonprofits are going to realize it is the only way they can survive. Innovate or die. Innovate or become obsolete. Innovate or go out of business. And the innovation demands that they use their collective wisdom. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, thank you for your comments. It made me think of a story, actually, that I've always found sort of sad and sort of funny at the same time. I have a half-brother. He's 10 years older than I am. He's highly intelligent. He probably has a 7th or 8th grade education. And I can tell you where it started, that he started hating school. He went to a very exclusive private school in Denver and was assigned once to write a story called My Dinosaur. Really smart guy, very, very outside the box thinker. So he wrote a story called The Storm of the Souls. I believe it was about dinosaurs, but he didn't call it My Dinosaur, and he got an F.
Oh,
he was little, you know, he was maybe 7 years old at the time. He got an F. Who wouldn't want to read The Storm of the Souls? So I really appreciate your comments, and I hope we can, you know, make room for those Storm of the Souls kids as opposed to the My Dinosaur kids.
Amen to that. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
My name is Marie Zimenoff. I'm in private practice. I work mostly with mid-career 40s to 60s folks who are changing jobs. And as I listen to you talk about the skills our young people need, I realized, as I've realized all along in my work, that it's actually those skills that those folks who are 45 to 60 are missing. That flexibility, that ingenuity, the innovation, the ability to be entrepreneurial. There's some basic factors there of I've got to make money, I've got to feed my family. And yeah, those are there, but the biggest thing is they lack the skills of innovation and driving change to find new work and to find work in a different way. So if you have any pearls of wisdom for those of us who work with those folks who are stuck, that would be much appreciated.
Boy, you know, that's a great question, and I don't have any pearls of wisdom for you, I don't think. It's fresh out, really. Left them at home, darn. But what first thing that comes to my mind is the importance of throwing ourselves into new situations, whether it's through volunteering, non-paid internships, but the whole idea of encouraging people who are adults to get out of their comfort zones. Travel can do that, especially the third world, but even locally, local volunteering, local unpaid internships, but get them out in ways where they're seeing the world in a new way. You know, I do, in fact, remember, Anne-Marie Neal was a vice president of talent development at Cisco, and her job was to train future leaders. And so she realized that the most important thing she could do was disorient them. They didn't have orientation, they had disorientation. So I'm totally serious. So she took them to Bangalore and to Beijing and took them into the hospitals and took them into the schools and took them out into the streets. And they didn't stay in these plush places. They had to transition and they had to learn to see the world with different eyes and in a new way. And I think it's that disorientation that begins to open us up and help us to become more agile and adaptable and certainly perhaps more curious. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Suzanne Wall from Connecticut, and I wanted to say thank you for an inspiring presentation. And what it made me think about was your comments about change and influence. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on how do we as counselors and leaders, what do we do to help our clients and our associations honor and acknowledge the past, but understand that there's also room for change and innovation? Yeah. And what do we need to do to help all of us develop the influence that we need to have big, bold, creative ideas and make changes and make sure that everyone is aligned with what we need to do to match up the reality of, you know, what does the future hold for jobs and what does the future hold for clients that want to change but they may feel stuck?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really important question. And in my work in change leadership, I've come to understand the importance of engaging adults in learning about a changing world as the first step before you promote or encourage any kind of change. So you can ask the simple question, how has the world changed in the last quarter of a century? And what do we need to understand as we think about career preparation, or I would call it now opportunity preparation for the future? So it's creating this adult collective learning, adult constructivist learning, where you don't just listen to a lecture. You know, you read a variety of things as a group. You perhaps go interview some employers and see what they're thinking and how they're talking. There's such a wealth of information now out there about what employers are saying are the skills that matter most. And I think the first challenge is to expose people to that and then to turn it into a question. So what does that mean for our work? What does that mean for our association? More broadly, I think we, as all of us, as professionals, need to give a clear message around the accountability systems in education. And it should be accountability for what matters most. This insane test prep system is only going to further alienate our kids and is in no way preparing them for their future. So we have to become advocates for accountability 2.0. Accountability for what matters most. We can talk more about that, but I think that's critically important in all of our professional lives, to be advocates for a better system of accountability. Thank you. Yes, please. We can only take the questions that are up here, by the way, and maybe not even those. We've got about 7 more minutes or so. Yes, please.
Hi, yes, I'm Jen Del Corso. I'm a counselor educator in higher ed. My question to you is about managing anxiety. A lot of my students are absolutely terrified to make a risk. I have career clients that are scared to commit to a certain field. And one of the things that I realized is that when you get into the real world, there are a lot of unknowns. My husband works for NASA, and every day I get to hear about how we're trying to get to Mars without burning up. And I ask him, how do you know what to do? And he's like, you don't know what to do. There's so many unknowns. And my girlfriend who finished her, residency in medicine and went through, and I said, well, what do you do now? She's like, I don't know. You just kind of
figure it out.
You just kind of go. And so when I get my students together and I say, all right, we're going to have you guys sit down and we're going to do a mock counseling session, they're like, no, Dr. D, you do it, you show us, you tell us, you point us, go that way.
Right.
How do we help our students become less anxious and ready to take those risks?
Well, they've been such good little doobies, right, all through school. That's what they know how to do. They know how to please the teacher and get A's. They don't know how to work in an environment where there's no right answer or there's no certain future. One idea that occurs to me, you were interviewing people and they were talking about how they deal with uncertainty in their adult professional lives. Videotape those interviews. Show them to your kids. Saying, you guys are all anxious about not knowing the right thing, not knowing the future. Let me show you 4 quick videotapes of people who are in different careers, none of whom have a certain future or a certain path. All of whom have got to be agile and adaptable and go figure it out and deal with uncertainty. Even come to embrace it and find it kind of interesting. Yes, please.
My name's Amanda. I'm from Northern Virginia, and I counsel college students. I actually do career counseling with them, but I also teach a career course. But my original career path was actually theater. So I got my bachelor's degree in acting. And what I remember about that education was improvisation classes and them telling us improvisation is saying yes and. It's accepting whatever the person gives to you and then saying and adding something else.
Neat.
So how that paralleled for me when I was listening to you talk is this whole idea of innovation and helping students learn how to be intentional and create new things, but working in a college and helping students look at the job market and the requirements, they still need that bachelor's degree. Right. And they still have to get through the educational system successfully so that they can then be innovative when they get to the job. So my question is, how do we teach students how to say yes and, that yes, I do have to work within these specific contexts and achieve these certain things while maintaining that sense of flexibility and being able to be innovative when it's appropriate and called for?
Yeah. I think you've framed an important challenge. How do you render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's? How do you do what you have to do? And it's the same in the work world, right? You're going to get tasks that have jobs that you don't particularly like aspects of. And so you have to say to that. That's the nature of the universe, right? And so we need both. We need the ability to figure out when it is appropriate to kind of go along and do what you have to do, and figure out when it's appropriate to innovate, to break out onto your own. When to pivot versus when to persevere is the way how I heard it put recently. Do you pivot or do you persevere? Because you need skills to do both. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm April Klimkevich. I'm a career practitioner at Nova Southeastern University. I have a sister who lives in Finland, so you might say, read my book, and I will. But my thoughts are that Finland is a very small country. Taxes are 22%. It's socialist. They have a great support system, and as a country, their values kind of have always aligned in the way that you're talking about America's moving to align values. The working world and socially taking care of each other and social justice and all of that. So how do you see us taking a system that works so well for a country that kind of has always been doing that and always valued that, and they have so much of a smaller population, and making it work for us with so many more people, so many diverse people?
No, it's a great question. It's a much longer conversation that I don't have time for, but the short version is Finland's success is not predicated on its smallness or its homogeneity. You look at neighboring Sweden, neighboring Norway, nowhere near the same results, not even close. Finland has done a series of things, which I describe in the documentary film, The Finland Phenomenon, and there's a new book out called Finnish Lessons. A series of things, but probably the most important is to give kids a choice in 10th grade between a technical career track, which has been developed in very close association with businesses, versus an academic track. 45% of the kids choose the technical career track that leads straight to a good job. We need to do the same here. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Ellen. I work at the University of San Francisco, and I loved hearing how in alignment you were with Temple Grandin yesterday about showing your work, which leads to the digital portfolios, which has been a big topic of controversy at our campus. And I'm wondering, I wanted to hear the statistic again about how many employers want to see those. I think the old statistic you said was 5 in 10.
Now it's 8 in 10, 83%. Look at the American Association of Colleges and Universities survey of employers done this year.
And I think the website you quoted was pathbright.com.
Pathbright.com.
And who do you envision for these college grads owning that portfolio?
The kids do. They own it.
Okay. Because at our campus, it was like, well, the Career Center should be involved in overseeing.
Well, you can help kids develop one, but they own it. It's theirs.
It's their responsibility.
I think it's huge, yes.
I love
it's
your
critical.
answer. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. You know, I suggest all 4 of you ask your questions right now, and let me see what I can do with them, because we're going to have to stop in a couple of minutes. I know.
Hello, I'm Nanette McCleary from Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. And I just wanted to add a little bit to what you said and when you responded to the lady about the 40 to 60. I agree 100% we need to get out of our comfort zones. However, what we find a lot of time, both in young kids and olders, is that they look for the answer in education. I'll just go back, get another degree, I'll go into a grad program. The problem with that, education has never, ever guaranteed anyone a job. What you do academically doesn't define what you do professionally. And we recognize that. I think we need to change a culture, if you will, we all recognize that, but how many of us go to the next high school graduation party and say, what are you studying in college? So rather than saying, what problems are you going to solve?
Right, it's a great answer.
And so in response to the lady, I say we teach people to stop looking for jobs and start listening for opportunities by listening for the issues, challenges, and problems that people are facing, because that's what we talk about all the time anyway.
Great. Thank you very much. We're going to have to stop, folks, because I have to share one more quick story with you and one more one-minute video. You know, we all have challenges with innovation. So I worked with Bob Compton to do this Finland documentary. We then went to Singapore, thinking we'd make a documentary there, decided not to. But I was talking with him about this book. He said, Tony, you can't just write a book about innovation. It has to be innovative. Okay, Bob. So, but he came up with this brilliant idea of putting scannable QR codes throughout the book, Creating Innovators, that you've downloaded the software for. And then he made more than 70 original short videos that illuminate or in some way highlight different aspects of the content. So we brought a little 1.5-minute clip along to show you, and it'll give you a very different sense of these young innovators, who they are, as well as their teachers. So can we roll that short video, please?
How important is innovation? How important is oxygen to life?
If America doesn't produce high imagination people, we are going to be a very poor country.
Raising someone with an intention that they'll be an innovator is actually different than raising a child that you want to behave all the time and be quite compliant.
Some of the people that are the most rambunctious seem to sometimes have the best ideas.
want to feel like what I'm doing every day matters.
Of course, my guidance counselor told me to go straight to college. My dream manager might not have told me to do that.
I came to Tulane because I really wanted to go to a university that was committed to public service.
The philosophy of High Tech High is founded largely on the idea of kids making, doing, building, shaping, and inventing stuff.
The MIT Media Lab spend far less time in formal classrooms learning theory and far more time on projects building things.
Knowledge, in a sense, is a commodity. You can get this on Google. It's about asking the right questions. It's about having the right insights and perceptions.
Let them fail, because they're going to learn more from that than we could ever teach them directly.
Our success is measured more or less by the rate of innovation.
Let me just conclude by thanking you. You all fundamentally are in a career that is also a calling. You're trying to help people create, or in some cases recreate, their own futures. I love the phrase from one of my young people. In a sense, maybe your real job is to be a dream manager. Thank you very much.